Hey, it's Karen Locke-Cope from the We Turned Out Okay podcast here with what I'm thinking of as coronavirus update number one, coronavirus and your family update number one. So I am traveling and I'm away from home and we're actually up in the mountains of Colorado staying with my parents. And the day we landed, the very first case of coronavirus happened in Colorado, and it was associated with the ski resort that we are staying near and skiing in. And then my son got sick on Sunday. We'd been here since Thursday. My son got sick on Sunday. And in the meantime, we're hearing about, the NBA being canceled and the NCAA only playing with nobody, around, and the skiing World Cup being canceled, and events around here being canceled, and it's been frankly, super scary. Like you don't know what's happening, you don't know who to believe, and now I've got a sick kid, and I'm worrying, is it coronavirus or isn't it? And what I really wanted to do was basically get in here, share our situation, and share what we're doing about it. And I want to wrap up with a particular breathing exercise taught to me by my son, by Jay. And I have an essay I want to reference of somebody else's for if you have kids home from school. And I'm going to get more into that in a second update. But I wanted to just do a quickie one for you today. So yes, here we are at my parents' house in Colorado. I'm in their den, and as I said, we're sort of getting these almost momentary updates about how many new cases there are in Colorado and how many and where are they located, and in the meantime, especially with my son sick with coronavirus-like symptoms, it was really getting pretty scary. And and as you may be able to tell, I'm also starting to get sick now. So it was so scary, and I think the scariest thing was to feel powerless and to feel like there was nothing that we could do about it, that we just basically are being buffeted along. And I was worrying about, like, what if, the Italian borders have been closed, people are in lockdown in Italy, what if that happens here and I can't get home to my family? I mean, all these things that are the other half of my family anyway. And just I was feeling terrified, not able to sleep, and struggling with it, with what is Jay got and how serious is it. And basically it was the powerlessness and just the fear of the unknown that was really hurting. And here's what I did about it. So basically the first question that I raised was, should we try to leave early? And we decided not to do that, mostly because he's just too sick to get on a plane. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that to him, but I wouldn't want to expose anyone else. I guess it was about a week ago, I did a video, and I will link to it in the notes just below here. It's weturnedoutokay.com/320.5 is where you can see the links. I have like 14 links, 14 things you can do to help your family through this coronavirus time, or something like that is what I called it. And it's also a podcast episode, which you can reach by going to that link. And one of the things that I learned about in there was that there weren't that many, that there weren't that many cases in the U.S. And that still appears to be true, but they're multiplying because people are, getting it. And but one of the things that's been pointed out, and I thought this was really smart, is people aren't just getting coronavirus. People are getting the flu, and people are getting other kinds of colds. There's many nameless viruses kind of going around, and so we got to think on that as well. If we panic because of the word coronavirus, actually, I heard a comedian a couple of nights ago talking about how coronavirus is the name that the cold puts on its resume, and I thought that was kind of funny. I've been listening to another podcaster that I really, really like, who did an update on how to handle coronavirus with your family, and one of the things that he pointed out was, you know what? Whether you think it's like the zombie apocalypse for real, or whether you think it's a hoax, or whether you think somewhere in between, coronavirus is going to influence the country. It's going to influence the economy. It already is. I mean, the stock market's going bananas, and so we got to try and focus. This is how I feel, and this is what I'm doing. We got to try and focus on what we can, what is within our control. So it was, for example, within my control to call my pediatrician, which I did. So Colorado is 2 hours earlier than Massachusetts, which means that at about 6 o'clock this morning here, I got to call my doctor's office, my son's doctor's office in Massachusetts, because it was 8 o'clock opening time for them. And they were wonderful. They basically took me through the symptoms that he was having, and they told me that, and then they asked me, have you been in contact with, have you been to any countries like China or Italy or South Korea, I think was another one. And I said, no, we didn't travel internationally. We've only come to Colorado. And they basically said, well, okay, so what you should do is you should do what the protocol is out there. So what is that? And I said, what they're telling us to do here is call like a hospital or a walk-in clinic or something like that. Because we're up in the mountains, there's just not that many places to go. And so the doctor, his pediatrician's office said, yes, do that. So I hung up with them and I called one of the doctor's offices here, and where we're staying. And what they said was, okay, what are his symptoms? And then not only have you been in contact with anyone or traveled internationally to China, South Korea, Italy, but also have you traveled anywhere domestically, such as in these following places: California, I believe was one, Washington, Western New York, Florida, and or have you been in prolonged contact with people who have traveled to those places? And my answer had to be no, because I was sitting next to my kid on the plane, and I didn't talk to like anybody else, and so we didn't basically have any prolonged contact was the conclusion of the qualified medical professional. And what that meant was that we probably do not have coronavirus. And so should this become something more serious for my son, for example, he's now been sick for like 5 days and he's getting pretty tired of it. And I'm just starting with it. So if it gets worse for me, or if it stays bad for him, there's the chance of something like pneumonia. So now what I'm happy about is I've got a plan. Like we've been cleared to go to a medical facility should we decide that it's an important enough, if it looks like it's getting worse or becoming pneumonia or something like that. And that is making me less anxious to have talked to people who, to have talked to his pediatrician's office. And by the way, in Massachusetts, they had not done a single coronavirus test, my son's doctor's office, which I thought was pretty cool, because if you listen to the news, especially, it's been kind of coming at us frequently during the day. You can be really scared, and so we don't want that, right? So these are the steps that we're taking to make us less anxious. We are preparing, not panicking, right? So we've all been using, everybody who's here has been using hand sanitizer and washing our hands constantly and bowing instead of, I've been enjoying that. We've sort of been bowing to acknowledge each other, to say hello or good night or whatever, instead of hugs or, and it's not easy. I wanted to give my nephew a hug, but instead I had to say, okay, mental hugs, and I think it's really about not panicking. It's really about talking to people who are in the know, giving your doctor a call, giving your child's pediatrician a call, and finding out what are the actual facts. And it's interesting too. We have friends from Australia that we visited with before Jay was sick, and Jay has been very interested in Australian politics, and he's been hearing some pretty rotten things about the current prime minister there. And whether you know anything about the current prime minister there, I don't. So I'm not qualified to have an opinion on it. But he was able to ask the people that we visited with, what do you think of the prime minister of Australia? Because they're from Australia. And they said, we support him. And he said, really? Why? Like, I've been hearing all these awful things about him. And what they ended up concluding was, it's hard for you to make a conclusive decision or a knowledgeable decision unless you've been steeped in the, unless you're really involved in this process, or really listen carefully to the speeches he's made, to the decisions, paying attention to the decisions that he is making. And my son kind of came out of it like, oh wow, okay, so I had thought something that was right was actually totally wrong, and this person is a viable person for prime minister, and here are two people that I respect who support him. And I guess I bring that up because if you don't know something, it's really easy to draw a wrong conclusion. an incorrect conclusion. So find out is what I'm saying. And I'm going to put in the show notes an essay written by Devorah Heitner, who is a children's and media literacy, a media and children's specialist, or kids in the media specialist. She's been on the show. She's amazing. And she wrote an email a couple days ago that basically said how to, hang on, I'm just going to reference it here. If your kids are home from school, here's how to survive. Because kids, somebody that I've just been talking to, their kids are home for a month. Their school's been closed for a whole month. So Devorah wrote this thing called Kids Home from School, How to Survive. And it came in email form. And I wrote back to her and I said, is this someplace on your website? Because I really want to be able to reference it. And she wrote me back and she said, well, now it is. Thank you for asking. So I'm going to link to that. But one of the things I want to reference from there is she says, and this, keep in mind, this is a media specialist. This is a kids and media specialist, families and kids and media specialist. She's written a book called Screenwise. She's really knowledgeable. She's got a doctorate in this kind of stuff. And what she says is, do not check the news more than once a day, and just save yourself that pain. That's just one little thing that she talks about surviving with kids. Like, just don't steep yourself in the news. So I'm going to redouble my efforts to do that. I only want to hear about the news once a day, because if I hear about it any more than that, it becomes very easy to panic. And then the thing I want to leave you with is the exercise that my Jay told me about recently that I've been finding really, really helpful. And it's super easy. He has a teacher at his school who teaches that it can take you, he calls it 3 breaths to go from fight or flight to rest and digest. And I just thought that was the most adorable way of putting it. So in other words, if you're feeling anxious, if your limbic system is firing on all cylinders and you're like, ah, and you're panicking and you're crying and you're worrying. I mean, I've done all these things in the last 48 hours. So if you're there, I'm there with you, and I'm also offering hugs. But if you're feeling like that, take 3 slow, deep breaths, just in and out, and in and out, and in and out. 3 nice, slow, deep breaths, slower than I did, much slower than I did. And that's what it will take to go from fight or flight to rest and digest. And that's where we rest and digest is where we can make our decisions, where we can make thoughtful decisions. We're getting kind of accessing the rational parts of our brain, prefrontal cortex, places like that. And that is where we can, oftentimes we'll see things that we wouldn't have seen, and we'll be like, oh, there's a solution that I hadn't thought of. So anyway, that's what I wanted to, what I wanted to bring up with you today. My plan is I'm here without my computer, which means I haven't figured out a way yet, I guess I'll say, to record stuff for the podcast, but my goal is to at least get in a couple more times while we're here and update you on our situation, but also I really want to share some helpful ideas for you and for your family, because we're going to get through this together. And hopefully something that I can share about what we're going through, but also about what we're doing about it, can be helpful for you. I really, really hope so. And I am just reaching through this computer and giving you a hug, or this screen. I suppose I'm on my tablet, but if you can imagine a mental hug for me, about some sort of acknowledgement that I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking those good vibes and that good energy for you, and I hope that you find this helpful. If you want to email me, if you've got questions about anything I've been talking about today, or how to handle a panicked situation, or anything like that, email me, Karen@weturnedoutok.com, and I will be more than happy to to get back to you. So thank you so much for watching. I'm really thinking that good energy towards you, and I am I'm gonna end there, I guess. All right, cheers. I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.